Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Amanda. I'm part of TTA's communications team. Thanks for joining our discussion today on responding to negative reviews. We'd like to thank our presenter, Bridget Peary. She's with Melwood Global and the TTA communications team. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. You can join the conversation anytime by using the chat feature or unmuting yourself. We'd also love to see some smiling faces, so we encourage you to turn on your camera to join the discussion. We'll be monitoring questions sent to us throughout the whole presentation and can ask those questions throughout. Please feel free to make this as interactive as you would like. Finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be hosted on the Transportation Alliance YouTube page and on the Ride Local Massachusetts website, which is ridelocalma.com. With that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Bridget and hand it over for Bridget to start our discussion on responding to negative reviews. Bridget, I am going to share my screen and here we go. Share desktop. Here we go. Okay. Presentation. Okay, Bridget, can you see that?
I can see that. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for the introduction. And thank you to everyone who is attending today. So we are going to be talking about how to respond to negative reviews. Truth be told, if you're online, you're eventually going to get some negative feedback. Whether that's warranted or not, it definitely comes with the territory. So today we're going to share some helpful information with you to address that when it does occur. So the first thing that I wanted to make mention of is the importance that online reviews hold. Consumers very, very often look to online reviews, both positive and negative, when making decisions. A couple of quick stats here. Consumers trust customer reviews 12 times more than they do manufacturer reviews. 90% of consumers report that customer reviews influence their purchasing decisions or whether they go with one company over another. 82% of shoppers specifically seek negative reviews. I know for myself personally, that's particularly true when I'm on Amazon. You know, I look at the negative feedback just to see what people have flagged. So definitely reviews are very important when it comes to consumers. So as companies, we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to those things and not only just interacting with positive reviews, but knowing how to effectively handle negative reviews. So moving on to what topics we're going to be covering today, I would like to talk about online monitoring, responding to negative reviews and comments. I have some steps for you and things to keep in mind. I have a couple of example responses that I'd like to go over from different companies and how they've handled negative reviews. And lastly, getting more positive feedback for your company. I almost said country, excuse me. Getting more positive feedback so that you can build up those reviews for future potential consumers as well. So let's talk about online monitoring first. So as I said, if you're online, eventually you're going to get negative feedback. That just comes with it. So if a customer writes a negative review about your business, obviously that's bad. But if you ignore it and don't address it, that's even worse. So ignorance may be bliss, but it's also bad business. So you really want to make sure that you're monitoring what's being said about you online on your social pages, in your direct messages, and on review websites like Google and Yelp. So the best way to do this on a consistent basis is to assign a staff member to be tracking all of those things. It's not, just enough to search your business name online and see what comes up, or occasionally check Google and see if anyone has left anything, any sort of reviews or comments. You really want to make sure that you have a person in place that will monitor that activity so that you can respond to things quickly and in a timely manner. So you want to make sure you pinpoint that person and you have them or yourself familiarize yourself with review sites, as I mentioned, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google, Yahoo, and then obviously social media. So once you or a staff member has been identified as the person who's going to be monitoring activity online, you also want to make sure that you have a plan in place so that when you do get negative feedback, there is a procedure there to help guide the response. So things to keep in mind: who in the company would need to see that content, who's going to be responsible for responding in the event that you would potentially compensate a customer who has been, something has gone wrong, what would you offer? So you really want to make sure that you have something in place there, a procedure for rectifying those negative reviews or grievances. So moving on, I just wanted to share again a couple of things with you. So making sure you look at Facebook comments and direct messages. Same thing with Twitter. People will often take to Twitter and tag a company if something goes wrong. And all of these are very public, so accessible for anyone who comes across your company pages or Google. Google Business has a platform where you can check these reviews and respond to them. This comes along with when you register your business on Google with your information, say your number, website, address. You'll see underneath all of that, there's a place for reviews. So that's where you're going to go in and check where people are leaving any comments, both positive or negative. Same thing with Yelp. You'll have a business page for your company on Yelp, and people will be able to leave reviews and comments there. This is where you would go in and check that as well. So let's move on to some things to keep in mind when you do have a negative comment or something a review that someone leaves that's negative. So they posted on your wall, they tweeted at you, they left a review on Yelp. You want to make sure you respond to them every single time. So the main reason for that is people want to know they're being heard, and they're more likely to stay engaged, your broader audience, if they can expect a response from you. If they see that you're paying attention to what people are saying, they're going to be more likely to interact with you. So it's far better, of course, to be polite when you get negative criticism and feedback rather than just delete it and ignore it. So you have to remember too that your entire audience, not just the person asking the question or leaving a comment or review, is going to see your replies or wall posts. So when you respond quickly, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your composure and making a good impression. So as I sort of mentioned before, make sure your staff are trained up on some appropriate responses. You definitely don't want to get defensive when responding to a negative review. You want to keep your focus on positive things and making it right. And again, making sure that they know that they're being heard. And then lastly, if it's warranted in certain situations, you may also want to take responsibility for something that had gone wrong. As I said, your audience goes way beyond the person who wrote it. So you're writing to everyone when you say, we understand this was our bad. We're going to try and make it right. So this puts you in control and allows you to fix the problem for the current customer, and also putting it out there for future potential customers that you're paying attention and that same issue won't be happening again. A few other tips, like I just mentioned, mistakes do happen. It might be very helpful for the consumer and the audience that's out there to provide some clarity for what happened. But you do want to make sure that you're not being defensive, not trying to justify what happened, but instead just sticking to facts and explain what happened. You're a business, everyone is human, mistakes do happen. So you don't want to sound like you're making an excuse, but instead providing clarity as to why there was an error, and apologizing so that the customers feel that they're being heard and validated for something that they see has gone wrong. So after that response to them on their review or comment, you would want to be able to take the discussion offline to further remedy it. I would highly recommend that. So suggesting, is there a phone number we can reach you, an email, a place for them to call you at your business, so that you can offer a solution to them and be sure that the situation gets resolved in a positive way. So I know that that was a lot of steps. So I sort of, I'm sorry, Amanda, do I still have the presentation?
Nope. My screen my computer just stopped, so I'm resharing it now. Were we on the same one?
We are on slide 8. So while Amanda's pulling that up, I know that it's a lot of information that I just quickly ran through. So I wanted to put a little visual there, a roadmap, which I think Amanda is going to be pulling up. Yep, there we are. Perfect. So when thinking about a negative review or a comment, sort of trace through your head this process. So the consumer or the customer leaves a bad review, you're going to want to respond quickly, professionally, and publicly. So responding to that comment, to that post on a wall, to that Yelp review, so that your audience and your customer base can see you responding, reacting, and trying to solve whatever issue a customer has brought to your attention. So that's our next step there. Take responsibility, offer an explanation. Excuse me. And then following that, you're going to want to offer to take the discussion offline, either getting their contact info or offering to them a number that they can call and reach you so that you can further remedy the situation and offer a solution that is going to positively end the interaction. So after that roadmap, I wanted to give a few examples of some of the ways companies have responded to negative reviews. Amanda, if you want to go to the next slide for me. So a couple of things here that you can see in their responses. They kept composure, thanked them for their feedback. They took responsibility and they offered to take the discussion offline. So saying things like, thank you for bringing this to us. I'm sorry you're having a frustrating experience. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Your feedback is valuable to us. Then moving into taking responsibility for it. We are sorry for the inconvenience this is caused. We pride ourselves on quality of service. We're sorry that it didn't meet your expectations. And then moving to an offline discussion. We'd like the opportunity to investigate your feedback further. Can you please contact me at an email address, a phone number? We'll work with you to resolve any of these issues. I want to give everyone a second to sort of look through some of these responses here. But that's very much a solid structure when responding to these negative reviews. Linda, I'm wondering if you have ever come across a review like this, either on Google or Yelp or any of your social media pages, and if you've had to respond to things like this in the past. I know you can't mute, but if you want to leave a comment and share.
I actually did figure out how, I don't know what happened. I unmuted myself now.
Oh, great.
So I actually have not received anything like this, but I wanted to participate in this seminar just because I think this is a life lesson as we get down the road in business. Right now, I'm not really in the social media realm, but this will happen. And even dealing with drivers and customers, how to respond diplomatically. And I just wanted to hear from firsthand what your recommendations were. So this is good information for me.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm really glad that we were able to share some of this with you. And if you think of any other questions or any topic that you want to delve into a little bit deeper, please feel free to ask that too. So then, as I said, this is a very good structure for how to respond to those negative comments and feedback, validating the customer and working with them quickly to try and resolve the situation. So lastly, one important thing too that I wanted to make sure we talked about was how to get positive feedback. Obviously, we don't want the negative feedback, but also trying to motivate customers to leave reviews for your company, so that when someone comes across your company, they can see that customers have been engaging with you and have had a good experience. So on your website, if you have an app, Lynn, I know you said you don't have social media profiles right now, but if you do in the future, you should make sure that you have a place for customers to leave reviews in an easily accessible place for them. You're putting it in their pathway when they engage with your company, whether through website or any of those platforms, so that it's, they don't have to go digging for it. If it's right there in front of them, maybe they're more likely to leave a comment or a review. After they use your services, for example, are you able to send an email to them asking how their ride was, if they'd like to leave any feedback? You can also create value for customers who choose to leave reviews by offering a perk. Say, if they leave a comment or a review, they'll be entered into a monthly contest for and receive something of value, so that incentivizes the customer for leaving a review. And lastly, responding to all comments, whether negative or positive. I think I said it earlier in the presentation, but just really making sure you're on top of interacting with your audience and your customers is going to, you'll find a lot more engagement and people wanting to interact with you further if you are responsive to people commenting and leaving reviews. So with that, I wanted to open it up for any questions and see if there's any other topics and people were curious about, wanted me to cover. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't know if I'm the only outside person in this group, but social media marketing, that's not my forte. So I appreciate these webinars and look forward to others.
Yeah, Linda, we're going to be scheduling a few additional webinars in the coming months on continuing to build on these topics in social media. So stay tuned for those. I know we'll be talking about at least more rapid response, and then looking at, how do you decide when there's some new social media trend with which ones to join, since there seems like there's new ones launching every day. So we'll keep you updated on those as they come as well.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Bridget, I know I have a couple questions that have come in, unless folks have other questions they want to ask right now. So first, you talk a little bit about taking a conversation offline. So if someone's super angry, what do you suggest I do to take the conversation offline? And then is there any sort of specific language you suggest using to kindly take it offline when someone's seeming like they want to just have it out in public?
Yeah, oftentimes, and I think we've all been there, where we get frustrated with something that has gone wrong, and lots of times customers really want to vent. They're looking for a solution, but if they feel very frustrated, then they are looking to air their grievances. So there are obviously going to be customers that are not going to be cooperative and aren't looking for a solution and just want to be negative. But most of the time, you're going to be able to talk to your customers, walking through that response structure that I went through, by making sure that you're acknowledging and validating their concerns and their frustrations. That's one way to quickly sort of disarm the anger, is, not to try and excuse something away or or giving them a canned response. So it seems like they're not getting care and attention to their concern. So really trying to acknowledge what had gone wrong, and then trying to offer a solution by saying, we can talk about this more in depth. We really appreciate you bringing this to us. We can call you, you can call us, really making it easy to start that conversation offline rather than just saying we're looking into it, but being proactive and offering a line of communication so that publicly you can acknowledge and take responsibility, but then offline offer a solution and work out the situation. So if you have a dedicated number or a dedicated email, I would have that ready for these kinds of responses. Otherwise, you can ask the customer for their contact information and say, we'll reach out to you to take that responsibility off them and have you and your company be the one reaching out to rectify something.
Thanks, Bridget. I know I see on a lot of online reviews, that it comes from someone always signs their name as opposed to it being from like the company as a whole. Can you talk a little bit about the value of like putting a face to the person who's responding and like why it's important not to just, why it's important to give them a person as opposed to the company?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point, Amanda. And I believe I might have touched on it, but I can go a little bit more in depth. It's definitely important that you come across as authentic. And if you can put a name or a face to someone or the staff member who's responding to negative comments and reviews or grievances from customers, people tend to be more understanding when they can see it's a human on the other side rather than just a company, because then there's that personal interaction there and someone who is saying, hey, I'm here to try and help make this right. So I think if you can put a personal touch on it, either with a name or a profile that responds to these types of things, you're more likely to, the customer will be more likely to work with you versus wanting to just rage against a company name. So I do think it's very important, because as I mentioned earlier, humans are humans and we make mistakes. And so when these things do happen, it's important to try and handle it with that sentiment and try and work with the customer to try and get to a solution.
That's great. Thank you. It always makes sense to be more empathetic and have a face. It's harder to be angry at a person than a company.
Definitely.
So I've got another question here. Do you think it's a good idea for my drivers to ask my customers for reviews on our service, or do you think that's a bad idea that will backfire?
So you could think about that as one way to try and get reviews and comments. I wouldn't recommend having your drivers personally take reviews and comments. At the end of a ride, you could have your driver say, thank you, have a good day. Be sure to leave us a review if you liked our service. But I wouldn't leave that solely on the drivers as their responsibility to try and solicit reviews and comments. I think an effective way to do it, as I think I said a couple of slides back, is making sure that when a customer goes to your website or they go to your social media handles, that it's very easy for them to try and leave feedback. Or if you're able to get their email and they finish up a service, that they get a notification saying, how was your ride? How did we do? Your feedback makes our services better. So that's what I would recommend for trying to encourage customers and riders to leave reviews.
Thanks. I know I've also seen companies like when they text you your receipt from from your ride that there's an option to also provide feedback or from the companies. So
Yeah,
that's too.
definitely. It just depends, I guess, on what kind of software, or if you have that texting capability, or if they book it through an email. It just depends on what your company uses, but if you have that ability to do so, and it's an easy way to set that up and try and encourage people to leave a comment or a review.
Yeah. I know some other places I've seen is like on the back of the driver side where and on the passenger side where you look at the TV screen almost. There could be a little QR code you can scan from the back seat to leave a review, or put some sort of sticker back there for people to leave their feedback, so they can just do it right from their phones. So
Mhm.
that's, if you have that space set up, you could do that. So you talked about identifying a person from your team who can be responsible for responding to these reviews. Can you talk a little bit about like who on my team this person should be? Should it be one of my call center operators? I don't think that always makes the most sense to put, the people who are dispatching or responding to all the calls to be the same. So should it be someone different? And how much time should I allocate for them to dedicate to this each week?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, it's really important to be responsive and to get back to customers quickly. So I think it shouldn't be from the lens of how many set hours you want to dedicate weekly. Some weeks you may have no comments, no reviews, and so that's very quick check there. Some weeks you might have a situation that you might have to respond to. So I think the time limit isn't a way that I would map it out. I would rather say have, if you're thinking about your staff members, who on your team would have the capability to check these channels either on a daily basis or every other day. Just a quick scan of comments and reviews to see if anyone has left anything, and then addressing it if need be. If you're going through all these different platforms, it should take, I don't know, 20 minutes, a half hour maybe, to just sort of look through. So whoever on your team would have that capability to be able to look, and then have the capacity to respond if there is a negative review that needs to be addressed.
Great, thank you. We've talked a lot about if a customer leaves a bad review, but what happens if I have a really bad separation from an employee and they start talking bad about my company on either social media or start leaving bad reviews? How do you suggest that I deal with that, an employee as opposed to maybe a customer or a former employee or former independent contractor versus, a customer?
Yep. Definitely a great question. This is obviously a little bit trickier than dealing with a disgruntled customer because there's a prior relationship there. But even still, you want to stick to the couple of the main things that I've talked about in dealing with disgruntled customers, which is to acknowledge them, and to say, that we appreciate you sharing this. We take feedback from customers and especially our former employees very seriously. So definitely acknowledging that and keeping composure there too. I know it would be even easier to react to a former employee that's talking negatively about your company, again, given the prior relationship. So it's very important to acknowledge it and keep it professional, but then again, try and shift it to a private conversation, maybe even bringing in your HR team to try and address it in a more private setting than airing all of it out on a public platform.
Great. Yeah, it seems like trying to get people to go from public to private is a good option.
Yeah. And one more thing before we move off of that, and how you handle those sort of interactions with former employees too is going to be an indicator to potential future employees of how you would handle a situation like that. So if you are, staying calm and being respectful and engaging with them and trying to have a further conversation in a respectful way, I apologize. A future employer will see that and see that this would be a respectful and good place to work.
No worries about the dog. So we talked about like where you can point people to leave reviews. Is there like one specific site that you would recommend, we send people to? Where, is there a site that kind of encompasses all reviews, or where would you suggest we start for that?
I think the two main ones that I would recommend are Google. Everyone uses Google. So that, when a customer is looking up taxi company near me and your company pops up, those reviews are going to be right there. So definitely Google would be high on the list, and also Yelp. People use Yelp a lot for business recommendations. You can pay attention to Yahoo. It's sort of the lesser used search engine. So yeah, I would definitely try to direct people to either Google or Yelp when leaving reviews.
Great. Want to give folks an opportunity, if you have any questions based on these or anything. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself, and you can ask now if you'd like as well. Okay. So Bridget, thank you so much for your presentation today. We really appreciate folks for joining us, and hope you'll stay tuned for our upcoming webinars. We will be having some in December, continuing on our marketing and public relations and social media discussions. Bridget, is there anything you want to close and just wrap up with?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. If you had any further questions, please feel free to email. I'm happy to answer anything that we didn't address today or you happen to think of later.
Great. Thanks, Bridget. And that email I'm going to put in the chat. It's info@melwoodglobal.com, where you can reach Bridget and the TTA communications team. Thank you so much, everybody. This webinar will be live on the Ride Local Massachusetts website. That's ridelocalma.com, and on the TTA YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/Transpo Alliance. Thank you, Bridget, and I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.